whose work during the Roman era became the authority on anatomy.
Galen, 130 to 200, a Greek physician, anatomist, and physiologist living during the time of the Roman Empire, was one of the most influential and authoritative authors on medical subjects. His writings include on anatomical procedures, on the usefulness of the parts of the body, on the natural faculties, and hundreds of other treatises. Since human dissection was forbidden, Galen made most of his observations on different animals. He correctly described bones and muscles and observed muscles working in contracting pairs. He was also able to describe heart valves and structural differences between arteries and veins. While his work contained many errors, he provided many accurate anatomical details that are still regarded as classics. Galen's writings were the accepted standard text for anatomical studies for 1,400 years.
What is the carbon cycle?
To survive, every organism must have access to carbon atoms. Carbon makes up about 49% of the dry weight of organisms. The carbon cycle includes movement of carbon from the gaseous phase, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, to solid phase, carbon-containing compounds in living organisms, and then back to the atmosphere via decomposers. The atmosphere is the largest reservoir of carbon, containing 32% CO2. Biological processes on land shuttle carbon between atmospheric and terrestrial compartments, with photosynthesis removing CO2 from the atmosphere and cell respiration returning CO2 to the atmosphere.
What is the greatest number of leaves a clover can have?
A 14-leafed white clover, Trifolium repens, and a 14-leafed red clover, Trifolium praetens, have been found in the United States.
How is the term zoonosis defined?
A zoonosis is any infectious disease or parasitic disease of animals that can be transmitted to humans. Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, for example, are indirectly spread to humans from an animal through the bite of a tick. Common household pets also can directly transmit diseases to humans unless preventive measures are taken. Cat scratch fever and toxoplasmosis may be contracted from cats. Wild animals and dogs can transmit rabies. However, most zoonosis diseases are relatively rare and can be treated once detected. Such sensible actions as regularly vaccinating pets and wearing long-sleeved shirts and pants when hiking can prevent the spread of most zoonoses.
Who was the first man in space?
Yuri Gagarin, 1934 to 1968, a Soviet cosmonaut, became the first man in space when he made a full orbit of Earth in Vostok I on April 12, 1961. Gagarin's flight lasted only 1 hour and 48 minutes. But as the first man in space, he became an international hero. Partly because of this Soviet success, U.S. President John F. Kennedy, 1917 to 1963, announced on May 25, 1961, that the United States would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. The United States took its first step toward that goal when it launched the first American into orbit on February 20, 1962. Astronaut John H. Glenn Jr., 1921. Completed 3 orbits in Friendship 7 and traveled about 81,000 miles, 130,329 kilometers. Prior to this, on May 5, 1961, Alan B. Shepard Jr., 1923 to 1998, became the first American to pilot a space flight. Aboard Freedom 7. This suborbital flight reached an altitude of 116.5 miles, 187.45 kilometers.
What characteristics do all fungi share?
In the earliest classification systems, fungi were classified as plants. The first classification system to recognize fungi as a separate kingdom was proposed in 1784. Researchers identified 4 characteristics shared by all fungi. Fungi lack chlorophyll. The cell walls of fungi contain the carbohydrate chitin, the same tough material a crab shell is made of. Fungi are not truly multicellular since the cytoplasm of one fungal cell mingles with the cytoplasm of adjacent cells, and fungi are heterotrophic eukaryotes, unable to produce their own food from inorganic matter, while plants are autotrophic eukaryotes.
How much salt is in brackish water?
Brackish water has a saline, salt, content between that of fresh water and sea water. It is neither fresh nor salty, but somewhere in between. Brackish waters are usually regarded as those containing 0.5 to 30 parts per thousand salt, while the average saltiness of seawater is 35 parts per thousand.
What is the difference in the functions of the rods and cones found in the eyes?
Rods and cones contain photoreceptors that convert light first to chemical energy and then into electrical energy for transmission to the vision centers of the brain via the optic nerve. Rods are specialized for vision in dim light. They cannot detect color, but they are the first receptors to detect movement and register shapes. There are about 125 million rods in each eye. Cones provide acute vision, functioning best in bright daylight. They allow us to see colors and fine detail. Cones are divided into 3 different types, which absorb wavelengths in the short, blue, middle, green, and long, red, ranges. There are about 7 million cones in each eye.
What are the major features shown by all vertebrates?
Animals in the subphylum Vertebrata are distinguished from other chordates by several features. Most prominent is the endoskeleton of bone or cartilage. Centering around the vertebral column, spine or backbone. Composed of separate vertebrae, showing internal metamerism. A vertebral column combines flexibility with enough strength to support even a large body. Other vertebrate features include, 1. Complex dorsal kidneys, 2. A tail, lost via evolution in some groups. Extending by the anus, 3. A closed circulatory systems with a single, well-developed heart. 4. A brain at the anterior end of the spinal cord, with 10 or more pairs of cranial nerves. 5. A cranium, skull, protecting the brain. 6. Paired sex organs in both males and females. And 7. 2 pairs of movable appendages, fins in the fishes, which evolved into legs in land vertebrates.
Why do people snore and how loud can snoring be?
Snoring is produced by vibrations of the soft palate, usually caused by any condition that hinders breathing through the nose. It is more common while sleeping on the back. Research has indicated that a snore can reach 69 decibels, as compared to 70 to 90 decibels for a pneumatic drill.
How do polarized sunglasses reduce glare?
Sunlight reflected from the horizontal surface of water, glass, and snow is partially polarized, with the direction of polarization chiefly in the horizontal plane. Such reflected light may be so intense as to cause glare. Polarized sunglasses contain filters that block, absorb light that is polarized in a direction perpendicular to the transmission axis. The transmission axes of the lenses of polarized sunglasses are oriented vertically.
What is German silver?
Nickel silver, sometimes known as German silver or nickel brass, is a silver-white alloy composed of 52% to 80% copper, 10% to 35% zinc, and 5% to 35% nickel. It may also contain a small percent of lead and tin. There are other forms of nickel silver, but the term German silver is the name used in the silverware trade.
What is the role of the small intestine in nutrient processing?
The small intestine is the site of most nutrient processing in the body. The first step is to break down the large complex structures of all nutrients, including carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, into smaller units. Most absorption of these nutrients also takes place in the small intestine.
Which island region has the greatest concentration of active volcanoes?
In the early 1990s, 1,133 seamounts, submerged mountains, and volcanic cones were discovered in and around Easter Island. Many of the volcanoes rise more than a mile above the ocean floor. Some are close to 7,000 feet, 2,134 meters, tall. Although their peaks are still 2,500 to 5,000 feet, 760 to 1,500 meters, below the surface of the sea.
What is the difference between a median and a mean?
If a string of numbers is arranged in numerical order, the median is the middle value of the string. If there is an even number of values in the string, the median is found by adding the two middle values and dividing by 2. The arithmetic mean, also known as the simple average, is found by taking the sum of the numbers in the string and dividing by the number of items in the string. While easy to calculate for relatively short strings, the arithmetic mean can be misleading, as very large or very small values in the string can distort it. For example, the mean of the salaries of a professional football team would be skewed if one of the players was a high-earning superstar. It could be well above the salaries of any of the other players, thus making the mean higher. The mode is the number in a string that appears most often. For the string 11122222344556667, for example, the median is the middle number of the series. 3. The arithmetic mean is the sum of numbers divided by the number of numbers in the series. 51/15 equals 3.4. The mode is the number that occurs most often, 2.
What is the average lifespan of a human taste bud?
Each taste bud lives for 7 to 10 days.
Which chemical element is the most abundant in the universe?
Hydrogen, H, element 1, makes up about 75% of the mass of the universe. It is estimated that more than 90% of all atoms in the universe are hydrogen atoms. Most of the rest are helium, He, element 2, atoms.
Why are arthropods considered the most biologically successful phylum of animals?
Members of the phylum Arthropoda are characterized by jointed appendages and an exoskeleton of chitin. There are more than 1 million species of arthropods currently known to science. And many biologists believe there are millions more to be identified. Arthropods are the most biologically successful group of animals because they are the most diverse and live in a greater range of habitats than do the members of any other phylum of animals.
What is nuclear magnetic resonance?
Nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, is a process in which the nuclei of certain atoms absorb energy from an external magnetic field. Analytical chemists use NMR spectroscopy to identify unknown compounds, check for impurities, and study the shapes of molecules. They use the knowledge that different atoms will absorb electromagnetic energy at slightly different frequencies.
Are men or women more accident prone?
Women drive and even cross the street more safely than men. Since 1980, men have accounted for 70% of pedestrian fatalities. Between the ages of 18 and 45, males outnumber females as fatal crash victims by almost 3 to 1. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, accidental deaths of all types from falls, firearms, drownings, fires. Even food and other poisonings also are more common among men than women.
How do permanent magnets differ from temporary magnets?
Permanent magnets, also referred to as naturally occurring magnets, remain magnetized until they are demagnetized. Naturally occurring magnets are found in minerals such as magnetite and lodestone. These magnets are known as ferromagnets.
Where are fungi found?
Fungi grow best in dark, moist habitats, but they can be found wherever organic material is available. Moisture is necessary for their growth, and they can obtain water from the atmosphere as well as from the medium upon which they live. When the environment becomes very dry, fungi survive by going into a resting stage or by producing spores that are resistant to drying. The optimum pH for most species is 5.6, but some fungi can tolerate and grow in pH ranging from 2 to 9. Certain fungi can grow in concentrated salt solutions or sugar solutions, such as jelly or jam, which prevents bacterial growth. Fungi also thrive over a wide temperature range. Even refrigerated food may be susceptible to fungal invasion.
How does deductive reasoning differ from inductive reasoning?
Deductive reasoning, often used in mathematics and philosophy, uses general principles to examine specific cases. Inductive reasoning is the method of discovering general principles by close examination of specific cases. Inductive reasoning first became important to science in the 1600s, when Francis Bacon (1561 to 1626), Sir Isaac Newton (1642 to 1727), and their contemporaries began to use the results of specific experiments to infer general scientific principles.
Who made the first golf shot on the moon?
Alan B. Shepard Jr., commander of Apollo 14, launched on January 31, 1971, made the first golf shot. He attached a 6-iron to the handle of the contingency sample return container, dropped a golf ball on the moon, and took a couple of one-handed swings. He missed with the first, but connected with the second. The ball, he reported, sailed for miles and miles.
How much heat will 100 cubic feet of natural gas provide?
"100 cubic feet of natural gas can provide about 100,000 BTUs, British thermal units, of heat." A British thermal unit, a common energy measurement, is defined as the amount of energy required to raise 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit.
What is the instrument a doctor uses to check reflexes?
A plessor or percussor is a small hammer, usually with a soft rubber head, used to tap the part directly. Also called a reflex hammer or a percussion hammer. It is used by a doctor to elicit reflexes by tapping on tendons. In the most common test, the patient sits on a surface high enough to allow his legs to dangle freely, and the physician lightly taps the patellar tendon, just below the kneecap. This stimulus briefly stretches the quadriceps muscle on top of the thigh. The stretch causes the muscle to contract, which makes the leg kick forward. The time interval between the tendon tap and the start of the leg extension is about 50 microseconds. That interval is too short for the involvement of the brain and is totally reflexive. This test indicates the status of an individual's reflex control of movement.
What was the name of the personal computer introduced by Apple in the early 1980s?
Lisa was the name of the personal computer that Apple introduced. The forerunner of the Macintosh personal computer, Lisa had a graphical user interface and a mouse.
What is the RH factor?
In addition to the ABO system of blood types, blood types can also be grouped by the rhesus factor, or RH factor, an inherited blood characteristic. Discovered independently in 1939 by Philip Levine, 1900 to 1987, and R. E. Stetson, and in 1940 by Karl Landsteiner and A. S. Wiener. The RH system classifies blood as either having the RH factor or lacking it. Pregnant women are carefully screened for the RH factor. If a mother is found to be RH negative, the father is also screened. Parents with incompatible RH factors can lead to potentially fatal blood problems in newborn infants. The condition can be treated with a series of blood transfusions.
What is the one gene one enzyme hypothesis?
In the 1930s, George Beadle, 1903 to 1989, and Boris F. Russey, 1901 to 1979, theorized that the variety of fruit fly mutations might be due to mutations of individual genes that code for each of the enzymes involved in a given pathway. Subsequently, Beadle and Edward Tatum, 1909 to 1975, performed a series of experiments with the orange bread mold Neurospora that elucidated the enzymatic pathway required by the fungus to produce a specific nutritional requirement, arginine. The researchers were able to create a series of mutants, each lacking in a different enzyme in the pathway. In this way they were able to piece together the sequence of events required for the production of arginine and thereby show where each mutant fit. The work of Beadle and Tatum provided important support for the one gene one enzyme hypothesis, which holds that the function of a gene is to produce a specific enzyme. Their work garnered a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1958.
Is there a quick and easy way to test for soil acidity or alkalinity?
Some gardeners make a simple taste and smell test to check the soil. Acid soil smells and tastes sour. Some put a soil sample in a jar of vinegar. If the vinegar starts to bubble, your soil has plenty of lime. If there are no bubbles, lime the soil with 4 ounces. 113 grams of lime for every square yard, 0.84 square meter.
What is ambergris?
Ambergris, a highly odorous, waxy substance found floating in tropical seas. Is a secretion from the sperm whale, Physeter catodon. The whale secretes ambergris to protect its stomach from the sharp bone of the cuttlefish. A squid-like sea mollusk, which it ingests. Ambergris is used in perfumery as a fixative to extend the life of a perfume and as a flavoring for food and beverages. Today ambergris is synthesized and used by the perfume trade, which has voluntarily refused to purchase natural ambergris to protect sperm whales from exploitation.
Does any type of wood sink in water?
Ironwood is a name applied to many hard, heavy woods. Some ironwoods are so dense that their specific gravity exceeds 1.0 and they are therefore unable to float in water. North American ironwoods include the American hornbeam, the mesquite, the desert ironwood, and leadwood, Cruchodendron ferruum, which has a specific gravity of 1.34 to 1.42, making it the heaviest in the United States. The heaviest wood is black ironwood, Olea laurifolia, also called South African ironwood, found in the West Indies. It has a specific gravity of 1.49 and weighs up to 93 pounds, 42.18 kilograms, per foot. The lightest wood is Esquinamene hispida, found in Cuba, with a specific gravity of 0.044 and a weight of 2.5 pounds, 1.13 kilograms, per foot. Balsa wood, Acroma pyramidal, varies between 2.5 and 24 pounds, 1 to 10 kilograms, per foot.
What is the Kyoto Protocol?
The Kyoto Protocol was an international summit held in Kyoto, Japan, in December 1997. Its goal was for governments around the world to reach an agreement regarding emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The Kyoto Protocol called for the industrialized nations to reduce national emissions over the period 2008 to 2012 to 5% below the 1990 levels. The protocol covers these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Other chemicals such as hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride were to be added in subsequent years.
What are the 4 Cs of diamonds?
The 4 Cs are cut, color, clarity, and carat. Cut refers to the proportions, finish, symmetry, and polish of the diamond. These factors determine the brilliance of a diamond. Color describes the amount of color the diamond contains. Color ranges from colorless to yellow with tints of yellow, gray, or brown. Colors can also range from intense yellow to the more rare blue, green, pink, and red. Clarity describes the cleanness or purity of a diamond, as determined by the number and size of imperfections. Carat is the weight of the diamond.
How does an independent variable differ from a dependent variable?
An independent variable is manipulated and controlled by the researcher. A dependent variable is the variable that the researcher watches and/or measures. It is called a dependent variable because it depends upon and is affected by the independent variable. For example, a researcher may investigate the effect of sunlight on plant growth by exposing some plants to 8 hours of sunlight per day and others to only 4 hours of sunlight per day. The plant growth rate is dependent upon the amount of sunlight, which is controlled by the researcher.
Which nations contribute to the International Space Station?
"16 nations, representing 5 space agencies, contribute scientific, technological, and financial resources and knowledge to the International Space Station. The cooperating nations are, the United States, National Aeronautics and Space Administration or NASA. Russia, Russian Federal Space Agency, Canada, Canadian Space Agency or CSA, Japan. Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency or JAXA, Brazil, and 11 member countries of the European Space Agency, ESA. The 11 member countries of the ESA are, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom.
Which organism has the largest number of chromosomes?
Ophioglossum reticulatum, a species of fern, has the largest number of chromosomes with more than 1,260, 630 pairs.
What was a Victory Garden?
During World War II, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Claude R. Wickard, 1893 to 1967. Encouraged homeowners to plant vegetable gardens wherever they could find space. Everyone believed that the produce from such gardens would help lower the price of vegetables needed by the U.S. War Department to feed the troops, thus saving money that could be spent elsewhere on the military. In addition to indirectly aiding the war effort, these gardens were also considered a civil morale booster. Individual gardeners could feel empowered by their contribution of labor and rewarded by the produce that was grown. This made Victory Gardens a part of the daily life on the home front. By 1945 there were said to be 20 million Victory Gardens producing about 40% of all American vegetables in many unused scraps of land. Such sites as the strip between a sidewalk and the street, town squares, and the land around Chicago's Cook County Jail were used. The term Victory Garden derives from an English book by that title written by Richard Gardner in 1603.
What are brownfields?
The Environmental Protection Agency defines brownfields as abandoned, idled, or underused industrial or commercial sites where expansion or redevelopment is complicated by real or perceived environmental contamination. Real estate developers perceive brownfields as inappropriate sites for redevelopment. There are approximately 450,000 brownfields in the United States, with the heaviest concentrations being in the Northeast and Midwest.
What are the component molecules of DNA?
The full name of DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, with the nucleic part coming from the location of DNA in the nuclei of eukaryotic cells. DNA is actually a polymer, long strand, of nucleotides. A nucleotide has three component parts: a phosphate group, a 5-carbon sugar, deoxyribose, and a nitrogen base. If you visualize DNA as a ladder, the sides of the ladder are made of the phosphate and deoxyribose molecules, and the rungs are made of two different nitrogen bases. The nitrogen bases are the crucial part of the molecule with regard to genes. Specific sequences of nitrogen bases make up a gene.
What is a tidal bore?
A tidal bore is a large, turbulent, wall-like wave of water that moves inland or upriver as an incoming tidal current surges against the flow of a more narrow and shallow river, bay, or estuary. It can be 10 to 16 feet, 3 to 5 meters, high and move rapidly. 10 to 15 knots, upstream with, and faster than, the rising tide.
Can artificial cells be made?
Research in progress at the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, NASA, is focused on cells as a means to deliver medicine in outer space. These cells are able to withstand dehydration and thus can be safely stored for long periods. Artificial cells are made of a polymer that acts like a cell membrane, but the polymer is stronger and more manageable than real membranes. These polymers are called polymersomes and can be made to cross-link with other polymers. Researchers think that many different kinds of molecules can be encapsulated within these polymersomes and then delivered to specific target organs. An example would be an artificial blood cell that not only delivers oxygen but also medication.
How does the body introduce oxygen to the blood and where does this happen?
Blood entering the right side of the heart, right auricle or atrium. Contains carbon dioxide, a waste product of the body. The blood travels to the right ventricle, which pushes it through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. In the lungs, the carbon dioxide is removed and oxygen is added to the blood. Then the blood travels through the pulmonary vein carrying the fresh oxygen to the left side of the heart. First to the left auricle, where it goes through a one-way valve into the left ventricle, which must push the oxygenated blood to all portions of the body, except the lungs, through a network of arteries and capillaries. The left ventricle must contract with 6 times the force of the right ventricle. So its muscle wall is twice as thick as the right.
What are the diameter and circumference of the Moon?
The Moon's diameter is 2,159 miles, 3,475 kilometers. And its circumference is 6,790 miles, 10,864 kilometers. The Moon is 27% the size of Earth.
What is rosin?
Rosin is the resin produced after the distillation of turpentine, obtained from several varieties of pine trees. Especially the longleaf pine, Pinus palustris, and the slash pine, Pinus caribea. Rosin has many industrial uses, including the preparation of inks, adhesives, paints, sealants, and chemicals. Rosin is also used by athletes and musicians to make smooth surfaces less slippery.
Where is the largest solar generating plant located?
The largest solar generating plant in the world is the Solar Energy Generating System, SEGS, located in California's Mojave Desert. Consisting of 9 power plants, SEGS 8 and 9 located in Harper Lake are individually and collectively the largest solar generating power plants in the world.
What is biogeography?
Biogeography is the study of the distribution, both current and past, of individual species in specific environments. One of the first biogeographers was Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778. A Swedish botanist who studied the distribution of plants. Biogeography specifically addresses the questions of evolution, extinction, and dispersal of organisms in specific ecosystems.
The 3 steps are: collection and processing of recyclable materials, use of recyclables by industry to manufacture new products, consumer purchase of products made from recycled materials. What is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act?
In 1976, the U.S. Congress passed the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, which was amended in 1984 and 1986. This law requires the EPA to identify hazardous wastes and set standards for their management, including generation, transportation, treatment, storage, and disposal of hazardous waste. The law requires all firms that store, treat, or dispose of more than 220 pounds, 100 kilograms, of hazardous wastes per month to have a permit stating how such wastes are managed.
How does a bat catch flying insects in total darkness?
Bats use sound waves for communication and navigation. They emit supersonic radiation ranging from as low as 200 Hz to as high as 30,000 Hz. The sounds are emitted through the bat's nostrils or mouth and are aided by a complex flap structure to provide precise directivity to the radiation. Echo returns from the emissions allow a bat to pick out a tiny flying insect some distance ahead. Highly sensitive ears and an ability to maneuver with great agility enables many bats to fly around in a darkened cave, catching insects without fear of collision.
Which chemicals constitute the human body?
About 24 elements are used by the body in its functions and processes. Potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium each occur at 0.35% or less. There are also traces of iron, cobalt, copper, manganese, iodine, zinc, fluorine, boron, aluminum, molybdenum, silicon, chromium, and selenium.
Which are the only 2 elements in the periodic table named after women?
Curium, atomic number 96, was named after the pioneers of radioactive research Marie 1867 to 1934, and Pierre Curie, 1859 to 1906. Meitnerium, atomic number 109, was named after Lisa Meitner. 1878 to 1968, one of the founders of nuclear fission. Elements 113 through 118 are unstable and have not been confirmed independently by researchers. The names for elements 113 through 118 are under review by the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry.
Do butterflies see color?
Butterflies have highly developed sensory capabilities. They have the widest visual spectrum of any animal and are able to see from the red end of the spectrum all the way to near ultraviolet. They are therefore able to distinguish colors that humans are unable to see.
Why do cats' eyes shine in the dark?
A cat's eyes contain a special light-conserving mechanism called the tapetum lucidum, which reflects any light not absorbed as it passes through the retina of each eye. The retina gets a second chance, so to speak, to receive the light, aiding the cat's vision even more. In dim light, when the pupils of the cat's eyes are open the widest, this glowing or shining effect occurs when light hits them at certain angles. The tapetum lucidum, located behind the retina, is a membrane composed of 15 layers of special glittering cells that all together act as a mirror. The color of the glow is usually greenish or golden. But the eyes of the Siamese cat reflect a luminous ruby red.
Which medical condition is caused by the abnormal location of endometrial tissue?
Endometriosis is the abnormal location of uterine endometrial tissue. Under normal conditions, endometrial tissue only lines the uterus. But in some instances the tissue migrates to remote locations of the body such as the ovaries, pelvic peritoneum, the vagina, the bladder, or even the small intestine and lining of the chest cavity. Endometriosis is associated with dysmenorrhea, painful menstruation, pelvic pain, and infertility.
What are the nitrogenous bases of DNA?
The nitrogenous bases have a ring of nitrogen and carbon atoms with various functional groups attached. There are two types of nitrogenous bases. They differ in their structure. Thymine and cytosine have a single ring structure, while adenine and guanine have double ring structures. When James Watson, 1928, and Francis Crick, 1916 to 2004, were imagining how the bases would join together, they knew that the pairing had to be such that there was always a uniform diameter for the molecule. It therefore became apparent that a double ring base must always be paired with a single ring base on the opposite strand.
Is a day the same on all the planets?
No. A day, the period of time it takes for a planet to make one complete turn on its axis. Varies from planet to planet. Venus and Uranus display retrograde motion, that is to say, they rotate in the opposite direction from the other planets.
What does the word amphibian mean?
The word amphibian, from the Greek term amphibia, means both lives and refers to the animal's double life on land and in water. The usual life cycle of amphibians begins with eggs laid in water, which develop into aquatic larvae with external gills, in a development that recapitulates its evolution. The fish-like larva develops lungs and limbs and becomes an adult.
What are the uses of discarded tires?
During 2007, 4,596,000 tons of tires were scrapped in the United States. Nearly 90%, or 4,106,000 tons, of tires were sent to one of the three major markets for scrap tires: tire-derived fuel, ground rubber applications, and civil engineering. Tire-derived fuel, TDF, accounted for 54% or 2,484,000 tons of the scrap tires generated. TDF is used in a variety of combustion technologies, including cement kilns, pulp and paper mill boilers, utility and industrial boilers. The TDF market is expected to continue to grow. Ground rubber applications, including new rubber products, playground and other sports surfacing, and rubber modified asphalt, consumed 789,000 tons, 17% of the total, of scrap tires. Another 562 tons, 12% of the total, of tires were used in civil engineering applications. These include tire shreds used in road and landfill construction, septic tank leach fields, and other construction projects. An additional 594,000 tons of tires were sent to landfills in 2007. Tires may be disposed in either a landfill or a monofill, a separate landfill only for tires. In certain areas of the country, especially in the western states, landfills are a more efficient option than other scrap tire markets. Landfills are also the only option for tires that are in such poor condition they are not candidates for the scrap tire market. Furthermore, landfills are an important disposal option for the residue and byproducts from tire shredders.
What is the shape of a raindrop?
Although a raindrop has been illustrated as being pear-shaped or tear-shaped, high-speed photographs reveal that a large raindrop has a spherical shape with a hole not quite through it, giving it a donut-like appearance. Water surface tension pulls the drop into this shape. As a drop larger than 0.08 inch, 2 mm, in diameter falls, it will become distorted. Air pressure flattens its bottom and its sides bulge. If it becomes larger than 0.25 inch, 6.4 mm, across, it will keep spreading crosswise as it falls and will bulge more at its sides, while at the same time, its middle will thin into a bow tie shape. Eventually, in its path downward, it will divide into two smaller spherical drops.
Why is some hair curly while some hair is straight?
The shape of the hair follicle determines how wavy a hair will be. Round follicles produce straight hair. Oval follicles produce wavy hair. Flat follies produce curly hair.
What is fly ash?
Fly ash is the very fine portion or ash residue that results from the combustion of coal. The fly ash portion is usually removed electrostatically from the coal combustion gases before they are released to the atmosphere. About 31% of the 57 million metric tons produced annually in the United States are beneficially used. The remainder must be disposed of in ponds or landfills.
Why can't metal objects be placed in a microwave?
Metal objects should not be used in a microwave, except as directed by the manufacturer. Because the microwaves are reflected off these materials and do not allow the heat to penetrate the food. The oven could be damaged by an arc between the metal utensils and the cavity interior. Or door assembly if the cooking load is not large enough to absorb the microwave energy.
What is the composition of lymph?
Lymph is similar in composition to blood plasma. The main chemical difference is that lymph does not contain erythrocytes. It also contains a much lower concentration of protein than plasma since most protein molecules are too large to filter through the capillary wall. Lymph contains water, some plasma proteins, electrolytes, lipids, leukocytes, coagulation factors, antibodies, enzymes, sugars, urea, and amino acids.
Do tornadoes in the northern and southern hemispheres rotate in the same direction?
In general, tornadoes in the northern hemisphere rotate counterclockwise, cyclonically, while those in the southern hemisphere rotate clockwise, anticyclonically. Occasionally, anticyclonic tornadoes have been observed in the northern hemisphere. Typically, anticyclonic tornadoes in the northern hemisphere are weaker. Twisters associated with weak storm cells or sometimes appearing as waterspouts. In 1998, a tornado spinning anticyclonically was observed near Sunnyvale, California. Rarer, but still possible, is a supercell, which generates both cyclonic and anticyclonic tornadoes.
What is the average age when puberty begins?
The average age when puberty begins in the United States today is around 12 years in boys and 11 years in girls. The normal range is 10 to 15 years in boys and 9 to 14 years in girls.
How does a cyclone differ from a hurricane or a tornado?
All three wind phenomena are rotating winds that spiral in toward a low-pressure center as well as upward. Their differences lie in their size, wind velocity, rate of travel, and duration. Generally, the faster the winds spin, the shorter, in time, and smaller, in size, the event becomes. A cyclone has rotating winds from 10 to 60 miles per hour, 16 to 97 kilometers per hour. Can be up to 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers, in diameter. Travels about 25 miles per hour, 40 kilometers per hour, and lasts from 1 to several weeks. A hurricane, or typhoon, as it is called in the Pacific Ocean area, has winds that vary from 75 to 200 miles per hour, 120 to 320 kilometers per hour. Moves between 10 to 20 miles per hour, 16 to 32 kilometers per hour, can have a diameter up to 600 miles. 960 kilometers, and can exist from several days to more than a week. A tornado can reach a rotating speed of 300 miles per hour, 400 kilometers per hour. Travels between 25 to 40 miles per hour, 40 to 64 kilometers per hour. And generally lasts only minutes, although some have lasted for 5 to 6 hours. Its diameter can range from 300 yards, 274 meters, to 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers. And its average path length is 5 miles, 8 kilometers, with a maximum of 300 miles, 483 kilometers. Typhoons, hurricanes, and cyclones tend to breed in low-altitude belts over the oceans. Generally from 5 degrees to 15 degrees latitude north or south. A tornado generally forms several thousand feet above Earth's surface. Usually during warm, humid weather, many times it is in conjunction with a thunderstorm. Although a tornado can occur in many places, they mostly appear on the continental plains of North America, i.e., from the Plains states eastward to western New York and the southeastern Atlantic states.
What accounts for the different colors of bird feathers?
The vivid color of feathers is of two kinds, Pigmentary and structural. Red, orange and yellow feathers are colored by pigments called lipochromes deposited in the feather barbules as they are formed. Black, brown, and gray colors are from another pigment, melanin. Blue feathers depend not on pigment but on scattering of shorter wavelengths of light by particles within the feather. These are structural feathers. Green colors are almost always a combination of yellow pigment and blue feather structure. Another kind of structural color is the beautiful iridescent color of many birds, which ranges from red, orange, copper, and gold to green, blue, and violet. Iridescent color is based on interference that causes light waves to reinforce, weaken, or eliminate each other. Iridescent colors may change with the angle of view.
What is the scientific name for ringing in the ears?
Tinnitus is the perception of sound in the ears or head where no external source is present. It is often referred to as ringing in the ears. In almost all cases, tinnitus is a subjective noise, meaning that only the person who has tinnitus can hear it. Persistent tinnitus usually indicates the presence of hearing loss. The exact cause of tinnitus is not known, but there are several likely sources, all of which are known to trigger or worsen the condition. They include noise-induced hearing loss, wax buildup in the ear canal, medicines that are toxic to the ear or sinus infections, jaw misalignment, and head and neck trauma.
What is a double-blind study?
In a double-blind study, neither the subjects of the experiment nor the persons administering the experiment know the critical aspects of the experiment. This method is used to guard against both experimenter bias and placebo effects.
How much of the world's energy use is fueled by coal?
Coal provides over 23% of global primary energy needs and generates around 39% of the world's electricity. In the United States, coal supplies more than half of the electricity consumed. Nearly 70% of total global steel production is dependent on coal.
How many different organisms have been identified by biologists?
Approximately 1.5 million different species of plants, animals, and microorganisms have been described and formally named. Some biologists believe this is only a fraction of species that exist, estimating there are more than 10 million species are waiting to be discovered, classified, and named. It is estimated that 15% of all species are marine organisms. Most scientists agree that only 5% of bacteria, fungi, nematode, and mite species have been discovered.
What wood is used to make baseball bats?
Wooden baseball bats are made from white ash, Fraxinus americana. This wood is ideal for producing bats because it is tough and light, and can thus help drive a ball a great distance. A tree roughly 75 years old and 15.7 inches, 40 centimeters, in diameter can produce approximately 60 bats.